It's decision day for a top 100 player in the 2024 class. Will it be Oregon or USC? Find out where Ryan Pellum is headed live in just minutes. And as we inch closer to the dead period, last weekend was the final official visit weekend of June, and the fallout has produced commitments, crystal balls, and loads of intrigue. Steve Wiltfong helps us break it all down. And we have a live guest in studio today to talk all things Oklahoma. How much pressure is on Brent Venables right now? Our special guest has all the intel. All that and more as the college football recruiting show starts right now. Alongside a very tropical Blair Angulo, I am Emily Proud. A reminder to submit your questions in the chat. The only way that happens is if you subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Also, please like this video. The chat is popping right now. A lot of fight on. I think there's some USC fans excited to see what happens on the show a little bit later. You want to know why they're in here, Blair? It's because we are waiting to hear where four-star wide receiver Ryan Pellum is headed. USC, one of his finalists. The other one, Oregon. Where are you leaning right now, Blair?
It does sound like he did not make it up to Eugene, Emily, for that official visit this past weekend. So I got to throw up the 2 for fight on for Ryan Pellum. We will find out soon enough, though. And it's an interesting battle. It's 2 schools that are obviously going head-to-head in a lot of recruiting battles out west.
That is a perfect transition to our first headline. Speaking of schools going head-to-head, Ohio State jumping Michigan to move up to number 2 in the 2024 recruiting rankings. Buckeye fans probably tuning out. Don't need to hear anything more than that. But here it is. 4-star cornerback Bryce West and 4-star tight end Demarion Witten both committing over the weekend. The Glenville High School teammates add what to this class, Blair?
High-quality in-state additions. Witten was one of the nation's top uncommitted tight ends heading into the weekend. West is one of the top 4 players in the state of Ohio. So a lot to like about what the Buckeyes are going to do here heading into the month of July.
Let's hop to the 2025 class. That's where 4-star offensive tackle Michael Fasusi named the Alpha Dog by 24/7 Sports at the Under Armour Future 50 event this past weekend. It's, of course, very early in their process, but why is this a name we need to know?
Offensive tackles with this combination of athleticism and physical upside are not common. So in true reflection of positional value, Fasusi is one of those franchise tackles that every program in the country would love to build around.
We'll detail more standouts from the Future 50 weekend a little bit later on. Meanwhile, Texas with a big get over the weekend. The number 2 running back in the 2024 class has picked the Longhorns. 4-star Jerrick Gibson means this is now the second straight cycle that Sark has landed the number 1 running back from the state of Florida. Why do you think this is quickly becoming a trend?
Florida is known as the Sunshine State, but it's also the speed state. Sark loves speed. Texas needs more speed heading into the SEC, and Jerrick Gibson should bring plenty of that with him to Austin.
Would you say he has a need, maybe, for speed? Time now for the Wiltfong Whip Around with our Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong. I saw on the monitor, I got a little smile from Steve there, so my job is done today. Steve, Texas landing that speedy player in Jerrick Gibson. The Longhorns backfield gets even more loaded. How were they able to go into Florida and snag him?
Well, look no further than their running back coach, Jashard Choice, Emily Blair. As you guys know, there were 2 running backs drafted in the first round in April's NFL draft. You had Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama, and you had Bijan Robinson out of Texas. And before Jahmyr Gibbs was at Alabama, he was at Georgia Tech, and Jashard Choice coached him at Georgia Tech. Then he got his hands on Bijan Robinson at Texas, helped him become the Doak Walker Award winner. He's arguably the top running back coach in college football right now. Roschon Johnson also drafted. So he had 3 running backs drafted in this latest NFL draft. Anytime he's been up at Texas, he's felt like home. Coach Sarkisian, his offense and the environment he's created around that program spoke to Jerrick Gibson and his family. And between that and the running back history, the great players that have played that position in Austin, all of that stood out to Jerrick Gibson, and he is in the fold now for the Longhorns.
Steve, let's stick with the Longhorns. They had a big weekend with top targets in attendance, including in-state five-stars Terry Bussey, Kobe Black, and Colin Simmons. How did Texas do, and as they try to push for some of these elite playmakers to join their team?
Well, Texas has had two straight number 5 or top 5 recruiting classes, so we know that they're going to make a big run at some point this cycle. And there, it was obviously a 5-star party at Texas. Colin Simmons, the number 1 edge rusher in the state, number 1 edge rusher in the country for the 24/7 Sports Composite. He was back on campus. His mom has highlighted the relationship with Coach Banks and Coach Sarkisian in the past, but people that spent time with Colin Simmons this weekend think that he'll ultimately end up at Texas. Now, he's expected back at LSU in July and then expected back again in the fall. Texas A&M, another school, expecting a visit in July. So more runway to go in the recruitment of Colin Simmons, but it sounds like Texas is definitely at the top or near the top for the coveted in-state player moving forward. Kobe Black's a 5-star cornerback that has Texas crystal ball action. Ohio State made an impression earlier this month. Alabama and LSU also in there, but there are people that think he'll ultimately end up at Texas as well. 5-star Terry Bussey, our number 1 ranked athlete, said it was a great experience, and the relationships he's building at Texas are standing out to him. And then moving off from him, I think that they're ultimately going to land Parker Livingston, an in-state receiver who's committing soon. I think that they're the team to beat for defensive back Jordan Johnson-Rebel. I think that they're in the top 2 for TJ Lindsey, a defensive lineman from IMG Academy alongside Auburn. There are sources that believe that Texas is the one to beat for Jaden Jackson out of IMG Academy as well. He's also high on Miami and Florida and Oklahoma and Ohio State. Zena Umeozulu had a great visit, been a lot of Texas, Oklahoma buzz in that one. He's also been up to Oklahoma, but he talked about the culture Coach Sark is building. And that's really what a lot of the recruits talked about, is they could really feel that culture, a program that's on the rise, one that had a lot of excitement around it this weekend. And I think this is a recruiting weekend that could make for a lot of excitement down the road on the trail for Texas.
All right, before we get to a massive crystal ball you put in over the weekend, we have hundreds of people watching right now and not even 100 likes. So, Steve, can you remind the people what the like button looks like? Yes, it's just a thumbs up. So if you are watching right now, it takes just a couple seconds. Go ahead and hit that like button. We do appreciate it. Okay, let's get to that. Crystal ball. You put it in over the weekend for the Huskers to land the number 2 tight end in the 2024 cycle. That's Carter Nelson. Now, he announced on his Twitter today that his decision will come Wednesday at noon Central. So what has you leaning Matt Rule for the in-state talent?
Well, talking to Carter Nelson's family and other people that spent time with him this weekend, it looks like Nebraska has emerged over Georgia, Notre Dame, and Penn State, among others, heading into his recruitment. I think he just trusts that Coach Rule is the guy to get Nebraska back, and he's developed a lot of great relationships with people in the fold for Nebraska right now. The Huskers have 24/7 Sports number 16 ranked recruiting class. They just landed right before this show started. Their top running back target on the board, Kewan Lacey out of Lancaster High, 10.7 speed, over 200 pounds. They're also trending for Rex Guthrie, a safety from Colorado, who's their fastest kid in camp. Quinn Clark's a 6'5", 200-pound athlete from Montana, a Nebraska legacy. They're also trending for. The Huskers are hot right now on the trail. Carter Nelson, their top target on the board, regardless of position. He can run. He's explosive. He's a 7-foot high jumper. He can play receiver. He can attach him to the line of scrimmage. He's a dynamic play waiting to happen for any offense in college football. And as Matt Rule and company look to win quickly in Lincoln, he's the type of guy that can help them do it. And if they can land Grant Bricks and Carter Nelson, the top 247 offensive linemen, that'd be a heck of a finish for Nebraska as they start to fill up here in the 2024 cycle.
Several prospects trending for the Cornhuskers. One player that's trending for the Oregon Ducks is offensive tackle Jaquan McCroy. He's the number 3 rated lineman in this 2024 class. Out of the state of Alabama, he traveled to Eugene, Steve, for his official visit this past weekend. Your crystal ball favors the Ducks. How confident are you in that pick after this visit?
feel great about it, Blair, because I think Oregon has led since he visited in the spring. His relationship with Coach Dan Lanning and Coach Terry, Coach Lachlan, and those guys has put Oregon in great position, the trajectory of the program, and then really just the emphasis that Oregon has right now on the offensive line. This cycle, they're putting together potentially one of the special classes. They already have Fox Crater, Devin Brooks, and Trent Ferguson in the fold. We like the way it's also trending with Brandon Baker out of Mater Dei, but Jaquan McRoy has been one of their most coveted players on the board, 6'8", 365 pounds, just a lot of developmental upside there with Jaquan McRoy, and I like the way it's trending for Oregon with a decision expected sooner than later.
Meanwhile, the Vols had a big visit weekend filled with a little bit of five-star flavor. Elijah Rushing, Mike Matthews, and Jordan Ross all on campus in Knoxville this weekend. So where do the Vols stand with those three after their trip?
Well, they have the nation's number 10 recruiting class looking for a second straight top 10 haul. Mike Matthews and his family loved it. Mike Matthews said his experience was memorable. And what stands out to him is the players and coaches are constantly pushing to be the best, and that's the kind of environment he wants to be in. Part of his visit, he got to spend time with Hendon Hooker, pick his brain about the program. Obviously, Nico Iamaleava and the possibility of playing with one of the top quarterback recruits from last year's recruiting cycle is also enticing to him. Tennessee does not have a receiver commitment right now in their class, but I think they're in a really good spot for Mike Matthews alongside USC, Clemson, and Georgia. And I think they got a great shot to land Amari Jefferson, who was there this weekend, and then Brace Staley, a top 247 receiver who was on campus last weekend. I think they got a great shot there. Elijah Rushing, Blair, I don't know about you, but I still am probably leaning Oregon, Arizona, but I think Tennessee did as much as they could this weekend. He said the official visit was amazing, really enjoyed the culture, hanging out with the guys. I think they played some basketball, played some volleyball, or excuse me, he was saying that, you know, the way that the program supports those teams, the basketball team, the volleyball team, the football team, all the unity between the athletes really stood out to him. And then certainly his time spent with Rodney Garner, one of the best position coaches in the SEC, also stood out to him. And then Jordan Ross, he told me before his Tennessee visit that the Vols were the one to beat. He told our Ryan Callahan that he's looking the hardest at Georgia, Florida, and Tennessee. I look at this as a Vols-Gators battle. Florida certainly has had a lot of success in the state of Alabama, but I think Tennessee, they were maybe his first Power 5 offer, but they've been on him as long as anybody. They got a great shot to land him. They got a great shot to land Braylon Russell, William Satterwhite, who are also on campus this weekend. So Tennessee, trying to stay in the top 10 of the recruiting rankings this weekend, could help them do it down the road.
Yeah, plenty of high-profile talent there in Knoxville. One player that didn't make it to Rocky Top, Steve, is five-star edge rusher Williams Nwaneri. He stayed back in Georgia, actually stopped by Athens to check out the Bulldogs once again. Where do you think the back-to-back national champions sit with Williams Nwaneri as he continues to maneuver through this process?
Yeah, I think they're really trending since his official visit the weekend of June 2nd. I think his relationship with Coach Chidera, Uzo Deribe, his talks with Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, and Glenn Schumann, all those have moved the needle. And I think that the program's track record on the field and player development has put them in a terrific position alongside mainstay Oklahoma in this recruitment. Todd Bates, Coach Chavis, Brent Venables, they've been on Nwaneri. He's been to Oklahoma 6 or 7 times now, so very familiar. He took his official visit the weekend of June 9th. So I think those two teams are in the best position right now. Tennessee has started to fade there. Missouri also got him on campus for his official visit, which was a Thursday to Saturday deal. Then he went to Atlanta to spend some time with family and also catch back up with the Bulldogs. And his coach told me that he had a nice time at Missouri too. But Georgia trending up, Oklahoma always been a front runner. And I think, you know, he's got an official visit set for Oregon for the fall. Maybe he makes his decision before that.
Let's finish things up with the top 2 quarterbacks in the 2025 class, Bryce Underwood and George McIntyre. Signing day for them miles away at this point, but where do things stand early in their recruitments?
Yeah, these are names that are going to be very popular on the 24/7 Sports Recruiting Show. over the next several months. But Bryce Underwood, there's 3 schools that I think are in the best position. You got LSU, where he was at earlier this month, again for a multi-day visit. He's been there twice now for extended stays. And I think with Coach Joe Sloan leading the charge, good time spent with Brian Kelly. LSU is a place that he believes he can maximize himself as a player. They love the culture and environment off the field. They've even attended classes. Him and his dad have sat in at a class at LSU on a previous visit, brought his mom down for this most recent visit. I think LSU's in a great spot there, but he's been to Michigan a ton since the spring. Since Kurt Campbell has been named the new quarterbacks coach at Michigan, the Wolverines have skyrocketed in this recruitment. Bryce Underwood and Coach Campbell have watched a lot of film together. Bryce Underwood was recently at Michigan again for a 7-on-7 with this team, and you can bet where Kurt Campbell was standing every time Bryce Underwood was on the field. So Michigan has definitely made a major move in this recruitment. Certainly doesn't hurt having Jim Harbaugh as your head coach with his quarterback pedigree and what they've done on the field. And then he was at Alabama this weekend, and so he got a chance to spend time with the Crimson Tide. Tommy Rees recruited him when he was at Notre Dame, so that's a relationship that carries over down to Tuscaloosa. And I think Alabama's the 3rd team in that recruitment. Then George McIntyre has been a traveling man this month. You got a few SEC contenders. You got LSU and Alabama. It's been to Alabama a few times since Coach Rees has been hired. I think that the Crimson Tide always open up his eyes. He's had some great visits to LSU. Nobody recruiting him harder than Joe Sloan, he said. Then he was back at Tennessee last night. Has been there a couple times this month. Loves Coach Heupel, that offense. And he's a Tennessee native that can feel the energy and excitement around that program, and that excites him about a potential future there. And then Michigan's the out of footprint school that he was back at this weekend for 3 days before swinging by Tennessee before this dead period hit. And that was his 2nd time up there at Michigan. They were the first Power 5 program to offer him. He loves what they've been doing as a program, and he's really hit it off with Coach Harbaugh. And I believe his dad played for Coach Harbaugh's dad in college. But George McIntyre is going to take some fall visits for games. He's going to play his basketball season. Then I think that's when we'll see a college decision. I don't think he's in any rush, but those are the 4 schools I'm looking at the hardest for him.
No need for a rush. From the 2025 class, still a long ways to go. Steve, I lied. We actually have a viewer question I want to ask from Ken Williams saying, "Hey, Steve, big fan. What are Maryland's chances with Dylan Stewart?"
Oh man, I mean they're in the mix for Dylan Stewart. He was just at South Carolina this weekend as the Gamecocks give it their best shot to land the coveted edge rusher from the DMV area. Ohio State has been picking up, there's been a lot of buzz about Ohio State since his official visit to Columbus, where he got to spend time with Chase Young. And then, of course, his family loves Larry Johnson. His mom loves Larry Johnson. They love what that program stands for, the way they've been able to develop players, and players from that region stand out. And then Miami certainly coming with all they have too here. They've gotten Dylan Stewart to campus a couple times in the spring, got him back for an official visit. And I think that Miami's on the short list with South Carolina and Ohio State. He recently put out his top 5. Brian Doan has that story on 24/7 Sports right now. I don't necessarily know where Maryland fits in with that, but I think the 3 teams I talked about the most, Ohio State, Miami, South Carolina, are kind of the ones I like the most right now for Dylan Stewart, with like Georgia in the mix as well.
All right, Steve, remind the people one more time, what do they need to do? Hit that like button. Yes, if you have not already. It takes a second. Just go ahead and smash that like button. Steve, thank you so much. A reminder, if you miss any of the Wiltfong Whip Around, you can catch all of it on the 24/7 Sports YouTube page. I highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button. We are so close to 100,000 subscriptions. If you want to be a part of that, make sure that you go to the main page and hit the subscribe button. So Steve gave us a little taste of the 2025 class, but this weekend was all about next year's cycle. The Under Armour Future 50 took over IMG Academy in Florida. That's where the top players in 2025 did their best to stand out. And if they did, our next guest was there to see it and is now here to tell us all about it. Let's welcome in national recruiting analyst Brandon Huffman. Huff, still a long way to go for these players, both in their development and their recruitments, but how did this event in particular help better paint a picture of how the talent stacks up in this class?
Well, what made it unique was this year, all 52 participants were from the class of 2025. In previous iterations, they had juniors to be, a handful of them when they did it during the Under Armour All-American game. Then the last 2 years, it was mostly seniors to be with a couple of underclassmen. But this year was all underclassmen. Given the timing in June, with guys on official visits, they focused on the 2025. So we got to see a lot of the top players. Of the 52 participants, 50 of them were already in the top 247 for the 2025 class. So we started to see some early separation with some of the top guys, some of the top skill position players, some of the top linemen really start to kind of mark their territory as being prominent prospects in that class. And it was kind of refreshing after seeing so much of the 2024s this spring. We got to kind of turn our attention to those sophomores that are going to be juniors this fall.
Huff, let's talk about a few of the attendees. We mentioned at the top of the show that four-star offensive tackle Michael Fafusi was named the Alpha Dog. He is also the recruit of the weekend here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. And, you know, this is a player who impressed a lot of people. What about him stood out to you? What about his performance made him the recruit of the weekend?
Well, I think you look at the frame and you look at his body and you just see the flexibility, the athleticism that he has, a real natural bender of the knee, a guy that can come out firing, is able to be really strong at the initial point of attack, real athletic, great footwork, and he's still pretty raw. This is a kid who has a soccer background. He's a little bit like a player that we talked about a lot on the show, Manasseh Etete, who came to the U.S. to play basketball, where he was a soccer background. And this is a guy that's continuing to get better as a football player, but he's raw. He's still new, doesn't have a lot of bad habits yet. But you look at his size, you look at his frame, you look at the strength that he plays with, and you think this kid still has 2 more years of high school football to develop. I think he's got a chance to be a very special offensive lineman in that 2025 class. And I think he did a great job of moving himself into the conversation for being one of the best after this past weekend.
Sticking with the offensive side of the ball, 2 headliners leading into the event were 5-star wide receivers Ryan Williams out of Alabama and DeCorian Moore from Texas, but Moore only saw a handful of targets and Williams was limited due to injury. So who took advantage and maybe shined in their place?
Yeah, Blair and I actually got to see this guy back at the Elite 11 regional trial back in late April, early May, and that's Jamie French. It's spelled F-R-E-N-C-H, the extra F, and I think that he provided an extra A for effort all weekend. He was fantastic. I mean, you just watch him run his route. You watch the ability to catch the ball, the real strength in his hands. He was getting pressed. He was getting bracketed in some of the 7-on-7, was able to get away from his defender, get separation, get behind them, makes the catch. He's athletic. He was doing a great job of showing body control, ability to adjust to the ball. Just did a fantastic job all weekend. It was hot down there. Maybe it was just hot for the West Coast guys that aren't used to the humidity like myself, but he looked like he was a Florida native. Didn't have any problem with the heat. In fact, he got hotter as the game went on and started to make play after play, and I think really put himself in the conversation for being one of those top receivers. When you have Moore and you have Williams there, and they were getting all of the attention and all the focus before the event, for French to walk away with the overall camp MVP out of a loaded group, I think that says a lot about his ability. He's a top 40 player for us, but I think he's going to continue to trend up, and this weekend was another kind of check mark for him to show he's among the elite pass catchers in the 2025 class.
Huff, earlier in the show, we touched on 2 top quarterbacks in that class, Bryce Underwood and George McIntyre. They weren't there, but there were a number of highly coveted signal callers in the event. Ryan Montgomery, Antoine Hill, Akili Smith, KJ Lacey. Who impressed you among that group across Friday and Saturday?
I would say that Ryan Montgomery had the most consistent weekend, from winning the accuracy challenge in the Saturday morning session to the consistency in which he threw in the evening 7-on-7. I thought he had the best day from beginning until end. He showed the accuracy, obviously winning the accuracy challenge, but then he showed the accuracy in the 7-on-7 portion. You know, KJ Lacey had some moments where he flashed, but then he also threw consecutive interceptions. Akili Smith was probably the most physically impressive quarterback of the 4 that were there, by far the tallest of all of them. And you can see, you know, the bloodlines at play. His father was a former number 3 NFL draft pick, played professional baseball. Akili probably has the most athleticism, the most upside. Antoine Hill, one of the strongest builds you're going to see from a quarterback in either the 24 or the 2025 class. But in terms of this weekend, Ryan Montgomery was the best from beginning to end, and I thought he really did a nice job showing consistency in the evening portion. This isn't like a lot of 7-on-7 7-on-7 tournaments, but these guys are playing in tournaments every weekend. It's basically splitting up these guys into 4 groups. You know, one team's offense, one team's defense, the other team's offense, the other team's defense. Yet he looked the most consistent with those guys, despite not having any chemistry or timing with them.
All right, before we let you go, which we need to, you've been putting in quite the mileage over the last few weeks, and you're headed to Hawaii this weekend. But just one more question.
For work.
For work, yeah, for work.
In Hawaii. Making that clear.
We do need to make that clear. That's why Blair's all tropical today, as he's headed there with you. But one more quick question. I mean, this is not your first Future 50 event. You talked about the differences. But just over the last 2 cycles, how did this group compare to last year's cycle?
You know, I actually was probably more excited about this year's cycle because there was so much of the newness factor with a lot of these guys that play. A few of them we saw a week before at the OT7 championship, but getting to see a lot of these linemen, I think, you know, sometimes when you're seeing the same guys over and over and over, you're getting the frequency bias, you're getting frequency fatigue, but it was like a new crop of guys that you got a chance to see. And I think that this year, with so many elite players that are already in the top 247 for that 2025 class, for them all to be there, like I said, 50 of the 52 are in the top 247. It shows that we've done a really good job with our 2025 rankings, but it also shows you just how much more exciting this 2025 cycle is across the board. We had a really talented 2023 class. 2024 maybe doesn't have that dominant player. We've talked about it with the quarterback position. There's not that dominant quarterback like there was a year ago. I think the 2025 class, top to bottom, is going to be more talented and more exciting to watch develop over the next year. So that's why this year's event was so much more fun to watch, because you got to see these guys a year early and really start to see, hey, there's some guys in this 2025 class that if they were a year older, they might be the top of their position for that class a year ahead of them.
Wow, I'm sold. Huff, thank you. Try to have some fun this weekend in between the work. You can tell Blair is already ready to go. We'll see you in your Hawaiian shirt soon. I appreciate that. Thank you. You can read more of Brandon Huffman's work on 247sports.com. And for more exclusive information, become a VIP member. We are running a sale right now. You see it there. 50% off until June 29th, or $1 for your first month.
Oklahoma. How much defensive improvement is it fair for me to expect? They were bad last year.
You get what you go after. We make success happen. Beating, playing to a standard.
We're going to find every way possible, every means possible to serve your heart, not your talent. We will employ an exciting, fast, explosive, and diverse offense combined with a physical, punishing, relentless, suffocating defense. That's real. That's relational, not transactional.
This is going to be a radically different looking team this year.
Woo, let's talk more about those Sooners and welcome in Collin Kennedy. He's back of Sooners Illustrated. We were talking in the office today about kind of drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit and getting excited. I mean, watching that gets you pretty excited for the upcoming season, right?
Let's do this first. So be honest with me.
Yeah.
How weird is it that we're doing this right now?
It's not weird. It's amazing.
I think it's pretty strange. I'm a little disoriented because I was thinking about this coming into the office. I'm used to talking to you and Blair over Slack and trying to convey to y'all, let's say, the controlled chaos that's going on behind the scenes, right? Usually I'm telling y'all, hey, teaching this college coach how to use Skype right now, give me 10:15, or like, this live commitment guy just hopped into his live stream for the 3rd time. Hopefully we get a 4th. But I'll tell you this much, too. I'm really happy to be here. We're going to obviously drink a little bit of Kool-Aid today when it comes to Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
But I do have something to say as well. Blair Angulo showed up with Hawaiian shirt. And for me personally, I brought out kind of like the Italian mobster look for our guy Adam Stanko. But like, wife, if you're watching this, Carly, I'm telling you, that's why I collected those Hawaiian shirts all those years. Because Blair Angulo just showed up in a Hawaiian shirt. But yeah, let's talk some Sooners. So
he's showing all of us up right now.
Man,
a lot of people though are watching. I saw a ton of people in the chat very excited to hear about the Oklahoma Sooners. It's been a lot of excitement in terms of their recruiting classes, but I want to ask about one guy in particular, and that's the #1 running back in 2024 in Taylor Tatum. I love the dynamic that you've got going on right now. Brent Venables in a fight for his services with the former head coach in Lincoln Riley. You gotta love that drama. But to Sooners fans right now, tell them, what's the latest with their recruitment of Tatum?
So, look, I'll tell you this. One thing I'm really proud of at Sooners Illustrated right now is Steve Wiltfong and I's ability to track the ever-changing timeline here. Because let's just say this one has been fun to track, right? It's been a little bit of a roller coaster. So here's what I can tell you.
Going into the official visit, for those of you who don't know, this one was all USC. I mean, it was clear as day the Trojans had built a lead that was pretty difficult to take over. That being said, Oklahoma was fairly confident going into this thing they were going to be able to make up some ground. And a lot of that had to do with two things. Number one, DeMarco Murray and his relationship with Taylor Tatum's father. That paid off immediately. It's been something that's been brewing for a while now. But then on top of that, Oklahoma's ace card, if you will, was always Skip Johnson. I feel like he is the best in the country at handling dual sport athletes, and it's not just because of Kyler Murray. He's had a number of case studies that have played out that have allowed him to master this craft. And I'm here to tell you this right now. I don't think Oklahoma leads for Taylor Tatum right now unless Skip Johnson is at Oklahoma leading the baseball program. And add on to the fact that Reggie Willits, Oklahoma baseball's associate head coach, also nailed the recruiting pitch. They took him through essentially the hour-by-hour schedule of what Kyler Murray and a few others did at OU. And let me tell you something. That paid off with Taylor. That paid off with his family. And I think in the long run, it's why we're sitting here today, even remotely discussing Taylor Tatum in Oklahoma as a potential thing. And so here's the latest. I actually talked to somebody while we were live. Steve Wiltfong had that beautiful face reminding you to like the video.
Another reminder.
He was talking about some Oklahoma recruits. I actually got a call from a source, and I can just keep saying this. Taylor Tatum's in no rush to make a decision right now. And I would tell you this. It's also a little bit more wide open than I think a lot of people are realizing. He's battling back and forth. I still feel like USC has a chance. I still feel like Oklahoma's in the driver's seat. But this thing still needs to play out. It's going to be really fun to continue to follow.
This is the #1 running back in the class, and it sounds like baseball has a big effect on this. That's what's so great about these dual sport athletes is there's so much else going on that we might not know about. We got to transition to the defense, though. Notably struggled last season. You can tell that Brent Venables, obviously, that's his bread and butter, his side of the ball, and he is targeting that on the trail right now. The defensive line in particular, you've got guys like Williams and Nwaneri, David Stone, Jaden Jackson, all guys that the Sooners are going after. What's the latest in the pursuit of those prolific defenders?
So make no mistake about it. Oklahoma is trying to assemble one of the best defensive line hauls in program history before they hit the SEC. And Emily, that's why this is all Oklahoma fans want to talk about right now. And Taylor Tatum, Caden Durham, all these guys are out there, and everyone wants to talk defensive line recruiting. And I get it, because again, the move to the SEC is coming up. They are in position. Probably never realized before if the previous staff was currently in place, right? But that's a lot because Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis have done an outstanding job of selling the future. They've gone to places and rebuilt defenses. Todd Bates is one of the best developers of defensive line talent. And I think on top of that, Chavis, Bates, Brent Venables, a lot of these staff members are very good at building relationships. And that's what guys like Nigel Smith have told me. That's what guys like David Stone have continued to reiterate. And so here's what I'd say. Number one, real quick. David Stone, still really like where Oklahoma is there. He's priority one. But 1A is probably Williams Nwaneri, right? Steve touched on a little bit with the Georgia action. I still feel like Oklahoma's really confident there. And those are the two guys that Oklahoma really wants in this class. They want that interior defensive line presence. They want that edge guy. And they want those 2 5-stars to be the cornerstones of their SEC conference debut. But I also tell you this. They're in a better position than you may realize with a lot of other defensive linemen. So let's start here. Dominic McKinley, 5-star defensive lineman from Louisiana. You'd think LSU, Texas A&M, sure. And I actually talked to a couple people today that reiterated that. But OU's in a really good spot. And I'll tell you this, the Soul Mission at OU, really cool idea from Brent Venables and that staff, led by a lot of guys that Caleb Kelly, for example, I know well, outstanding human beings in that office. They sell these guys on becoming better off the field. And I think that hit a note with McKinley and his family. And on top of that, you've got guys like Bates who have been outstanding at not only building that relationship, but identifying McKinley early, and that's paid off over the long run. And then you just go down the list. Nigel Smith, still like where OU is there. Wyatt Gilmore, I've got my crystal ball in. Jaden Jackson, IMG Academy guy they really like. The Zena Umeozulu stuff, Wiltfong touched on earlier. I'll believe it when I see it because, his brother plays for Texas, folks. Like, we're still figuring that one out, but the list goes on and on. I think Oklahoma defensive line recruiting is in an incredible spot, and I think it's only going to get better as time goes on. They're doing some really special stuff on the line of scrimmage.
So we joked about drinking the Oklahoma Kool-Aid and the excitement, but you look at it, they had a top 10 class in 2022, top 5 in 2023. This cycle, though, just outside the top 40 with 8 commits. It's very early on in the process. We've mentioned that many times. It's just June, but you compile that with the results on the field last season, just how much pressure is on this staff to keep up with momentum?
Well, I mean, there's tons. I mean, guys, they're going to the SEC in a year, right? And they are recruiting at an outstanding level, just like you mentioned, Emily. But at the same time, at some point, the on-field results have to match the sell. And I think especially if you're going to try and land not only elite defensive line prospects, but offensive linemen, skill guys, just across the board, really. Some of these races that Oklahoma probably shouldn't be in right now, like a Terry Bussey off the top of my head, that has to eventually play out in a manner in which these players can see themselves in Norman. And so I think when you look at the staff, Oklahoma fans gave this staff a rebuild year. Let's make that clear. I don't know that a lot of people nationally know that Sooner fans are still bought in because, well, OU fans are eccentric, if we'll say, on the social media spheres, but look, at some point, you have to stop rebuilding and start playing things out in a manner in which you can actually see this program contending for national titles, because that's where these top prospects want to be. And so I think there's a lot of pressure right now, but as we'll get into, eventually that will subside. It's just they're in a lot of heated recruiting battles, and we haven't even touched on the fall yet. At some point, they're going to have to win these recruiting battles and games. So pressure creates diamonds. Let's see what kind of diamonds come out of Norman.
It's a time of transition right now. So there's pressure when it comes to that, but there's patience also, as it sounds like. 8 commits. Just said that. How do they bring that number up? What's ahead?
The month of July, right? So I'm going to tell you this right now. I laid out kind of very briefly for our members at Sooners Illustrated just a number of different timelines that I'm keeping an eye on going into next month. And while they do have a big potential commitment coming up tomorrow, and Xavier Robinson, James Jackson, and Josh Calloway for Sooners Illustrated will be on site, by the way. July is where potentially a lot of these dominoes fall, and I firmly believe July is the month in which you see Oklahoma take the rise in the rankings that they've needed for a long time. So you look at this. July 1st, Justin Denson, cornerback target, he's set to announce a decision. July 8th, Marcus Easley, the offensive tackle, and Devon Mitchell, the tight end, who is essentially Oklahoma's tight end target among like 3 or 4 classes. They really want that guy. He's also on July 8th with Easley. Casey Poe, priority offensive line target. He'll be around July 12th. And then you've got a number of other timelines that could easily play out. I think Wyatt Gilmore, if he makes a decision in favor of the Sooners, it'd be in July. Talk to a source, like I mentioned earlier, about Taylor Tatum. Still get the sense that thing's going to come sometime in July. And just again, there's so many other players that they're hoping to see announced over the next 30, 40 days. I think eventually you're going to see the Sooners do exactly what the fans have been hoping for. And so as long as you build that patience, right, July is the month you've been waiting for if you're an Oklahoma fan. And I firmly believe that that patience will eventually play off. Just give the staff like 30, 40 more days.
Okay. Sounds like we need to talk again after July then, because that's where all the action is. And also, of course, we need to talk again.
Well, yeah, I'd love to come back on if Stanko and Belcher let me back on. So we'll see what happens.
Those are the bosses. Before we say goodbye, though, I mean, Sooners Illustrated has been up and running for a few months now. You guys are obviously doing a ton of great work there. I love the Collins Corner. It's one of my favorite new reads. Loving it there. But tell the people that are watching right now what they can look forward to in the coming months.
Look, if you sign up, you get half off a VIP subscription, and you get Paramount Plus, and you get access to the entire 24/7 Sports Network. That means Steve Wiltfong, Brandon Huffman, those handsome faces, Blair Angulo, who's been awesome at Sooners Illustrated as well, all these national recruiting analysts, and then our outstanding team. You've got Tom Green, who just came in. James Jackson has been doing an outstanding job, not only covering football, but softball, women's basketball. My guy Josh Calloway is not only going to help continue to cover the team, but help us with the YouTube channel. And then you've got my ugly mug, who's doing my best. So I think now is no better time to sign up for Sooners Illustrated, folks. I mean, OU football recruiting is going to blow up, and then you got the season, and then eventually SEC play. So I would just go ahead and say sign up now. It'll pay off.
Yeah, if you can't tell by this segment, it's not slowing down in Norman. So definitely make sure that you are signed up. Collin, thank you so much for being here. One more reminder to all the Oklahoma fans to hit that like button and hit whatever button gets you here to Sooners Illustrated. Join for $1 today. As we said, again, 50% off for that deal. Collin and the crew have you covered. Also, there's quite a few SEC fans in the chat right now. Make sure you're getting comfortable with your new future opponents. Sooners Illustrated has you covered there. All right. It all comes down to 2 schools, USC and Oregon. Only one will land 4-star wide receiver Ryan Pellum. The Milliken standout has over 40 offers. He played in all 3 phases as a junior, caught 52 passes for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. He added 27 tackles on defense and returned a kick for a touchdown. He sounds pretty busy, but he's here with us on the show today. So without further ado, I'll waste no more time. Let's welcome in the man of the hour, Ryan Pellum. Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show today. Before we get to your commitment, though, you've been able to visit your 2 finalists during this process. So what were some of the important factors for you going into your decision today?
Important factors would be, my relationship with the coaching staff, my relationship with the players, and make sure they treat me how they treat me when I'm not a player. So,
Ryan, no prospect is able to get to the level that you've reached alone. Who are some of the people that you have there to thank about making this moment possible?
First, I thank God. Without God, I wouldn't even be here. I couldn't be who I am. Big thanks to my brother for sure. My brother, my father figure, and all of that. He was there since forever. I couldn't thank him enough. And my mom, for sure, she birthed me. So
none of us would be here.
That's the biggest, exactly. And that's the biggest thanks. She supported me with whatever I did. When I didn't even want to play. So I love her.
Oh, I love it. Okay, it's a moment we have all been waiting for. You got 2 great options there I see on the desk, Oregon and USC. Ryan, you have the floor. Where are you headed to play college ball?
Well, I'm headed for 4 years.
Oh my gosh.
It's been a long journey. I'm glad it's coming to an end after. Come on.
Okay, this is the cutest commitment we have ever had. Ryan, who is that?
It's my turn. It's my turn.
Oh my goodness. This is fantastic. Congratulations. Okay, so one of the top players in California, not going too far from home. I hear the music ringing right now. So Ryan, what stood out about Lincoln Riley in this program that led to your commitment?
Lincoln Riley, I built my relationship with Lincoln Riley in a short span of time, so that says a lot about Lincoln. I also built my relationship with Coach Luke, so that really was a big factor.
Ryan, there's a lot of USC fans watching right now. What do you have to say to the Trojan faithful about the type of player that the Trojans just landed?
Type of player the Trojans just landed. They say it all the time. Lightning in a bottle. Give me the ball, I'm going to make it happen whenever.
I love it. That's all that needs to be said. Ryan, thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your big day today. Congratulations, and we can't wait to see you play at the next level.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, that was just adorable. Oh my goodness, we need to add a new name. We need to add a new name to this graphic here. We wanted to show you some of the notable commitments, but I feel like we needed to stick on the baby for a little bit longer. It was adorable, but we welcome in our friend Greg Biggins here to talk about USC being the big winner. How were the Trojans able to beat out Dan Lanning and the Ducks for Ryan Pellum?
Yeah, no, it was all about relationships, I think, for Ryan. And, early on, they weren't even in his top 10, if you can believe that, going back to December. And I think it was kind of some miscommunication, to be honest with you. And then all of a sudden, I think, I don't know if, Ryan knew how much USC wanted him. And I don't know if Lincoln Riley knew how interested Ryan was. But eventually, they kind of started to get on the same page. Ryan visited a couple times. Coach Lincoln Riley went to Milliken a couple times to visit. And they kind of connected. USC jumped from outside the top 10 into the top 3 and ended up getting the commitment from him. So great fit. Really happy for him and the family. Obviously, you saw the little baby. I think that ended up being a factor in the decision as well. So I think a lot of factors led Ryan to go in there. Apologize for the dog. You can. I think the dog's excited for Ryan Pellum as well. So, what a day we've had.
I'm sorry, your dog seems very excited about this commitment. Clearly a USC fan there. Greg, thank you so much for the intel there. Blair, I mean, we've got to talk about USC being the big winner in Ryan Pellum here. This is your neck of the woods there. What kind of player do they get in him?
I love him as a prospect, and I love the ability for USC to continue to stockpile talent at the receiver position. You know, we think about Caleb Williams and what he's able to do on the field, and we project or we envision what they're going to be able to do at the quarterback position. Well, none of that is going to be possible without playmakers like Ryan Pellum. He's able to get out in space and be electric with the ball in his hands. He can blow by defenders and get behind the secondary. I like what he's going to be able to do underneath in that crossing route system that Lincoln Riley likes to employ with the USC Trojans. So a terrific home run hire, obviously on the recruiting trail, now paying off because they're keeping one of the top players in state and keeping them close to home. I think this is how USC is going to be able to continue to build on offense to get guys like Ryan Pellum in that system. It's a home run win.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to answer a viewer question here from Jeff asking, does USC have any shot with Aiden Breland?
Yeah, right now it doesn't look great for the Trojans. I think we've obviously been winning, or we've been talking about some of their wins on the recruiting trail recently. They had a huge recruiting weekend recently, but I think with Aiden Breland, they still have some ground to make up. They have some things to kind of sort through. If he had to make a decision right now, it doesn't sound like USC would be the choice. I think there are a few other schools, Miami, namely, that I know he has really fallen in love with. You think about some of the schools in the Midwest, other schools like Oregon, they're also making a big push for Aiden Breland. I think he might take a visit during the season, and that's where USC can kind of make their charge. But right now, it doesn't look pretty for the Trojans to lock in the 5-star from Mater Dei.
You win some, you lose some. You land Ryan Pellum, you might not get Aiden Breland, but how about this next guy? Trojan fans, you could continue to build on the string of commitments here with Marquise Gallegos. He will make his commitment live right here on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel tomorrow. He is choosing between Michigan, OU, Oregon, USC, and Notre Dame. Tune in tomorrow at 7 Eastern. One more ask for you to hit that like button if you have not already. Again, subscribe to the channel. We have content like this all the time. We love these live commitments. They're happening almost every day at this point. Over 300 players have committed in the month of June. We still have a few days left to go. So go ahead, hit that like button, and subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. Alongside Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.